This morning. We're going to begin the committee. We're going to start with the hearing on SB 371, expanding the Kansas Silver Alert Plan, and Eileen has an overview for us.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Senate Bill 371 amends KSA 75-754, the statute that establishes the Kansas Silver Alert Plan under the auspices of the Attorney General's office. So under current law, public notice of a missing elderly person may be promptly broadcast through the plan in order for a search to be undertaken timely for that person. Senate Bill 371 would amend the statute to allow for the Kansas Silver Alert Plan to provide for public notice of a missing person who is 18 years of age or older and who has an intellectual disability, and this would be in addition to its current function. And with that, I can stand for questions.
Committee, any questions for Eileen this morning? Seeing none, thank you, Eileen. We're going to begin with the first proponent, Nick Wood, Associate Director of InterHab. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. We support Senate Bill 371, the Kansas Silver Alert. We think works pretty well for seniors and people who currently fall under the Attorney General's protocol. We'd like to add adults over the age of 18 with intellectual disability, and you're going to hear some positive testimony from the other conferees today.
Thank you. Any questions for Nick? Seeing none, thank you. And now we'll welcome Callie Simmons, Policy and Program Analyst with KC Council on Developmental Disabilities. Welcome, Callie.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Callie Simmons. I'm a Policy and Program Analyst with the Kansas Council on Developmental Disabilities. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony today in support of 371. The Council's mission is to empower individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families to lead systems change, advocate for inclusive integrated environments, and create communities where everybody belongs and thrives. We are made up of self-advocates, family members, state agencies, and other partners. And part of our 5-year plan is to really work to increase state protections for individuals with disabilities. So as you know, Senate Bill 371 amends the Kansas Silver Alert Plan to include individuals with intellectual disabilities, age 18 and over. We commend Senator Holscher for her efforts to spearhead this legislation that aligns Kansas with several other states across the U.S. That have enacted laws that allow for statewide coordination. For individuals with intellectual disabilities, wandering can be a safety issue. So wandering is when you leave a safe area or a responsible caregiver without really having a clear direction of where you're going and potentially putting yourself at risk. And it's important to note that not all individuals age out of that, which is why we believe adding intellectual disability to the current Silver Alert Plan would be beneficial to increase those protections. So I will stand for questions at the appropriate time.
And we will wait until after we hear from Delancey Allred, with Public Policy Coordinator with the Autism Society.
Hi all, do you hear me?
WebEx, can you hear us?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much for the opportunity to submit testimony regarding SB 371, a bill that will add intellectual disability to the Kansas Silver Alert Plan. My name is Delancey Allred, and I'm here to testify on behalf of the Autism Society affiliate in Kansas, the Autism Society of the Heartland. The Autism Society of the Heartland has served Kansas since 2009 by offering grants, scholarships, information referral services, educational workshops, social and support groups, and is led by Steve Kelsey. As already stated by our other proponents, SB 371 amends the pre-existing Kansas Silver Alert Plan to include vulnerable persons, including those with intellectual disabilities who are 18 and older. Kansas statute defines an intellectual disability as one with significantly sub-average general intellectual functioning, existing concurrently with deficits in adaptive behavior. According to the CDC, about 1 in 3 individuals with autism are also diagnosed with an intellectual disability. Research shows that individuals with autism, including those who may be intellectually disabled, tend to wander similar to individuals with Alzheimer's or dementia. The term wander is used to describe the act of moving without a specific destination or clear purpose, indicating a lack of self-awareness on the part of the person. The CDC reports that 1 in 36 children have autism spectrum disorder, and more than half were reported to wander. The Autism Society of Heartland's board president, Sam Sylvie, shared her story in her written testimony about her son, Brooks, who often elopes and wanders. She worries that these behaviors will continue as Brooks ages. Over a 5-year period, it was shown that a third of those with autism that wandered ended up in harm's way and needed serious medical intervention. This is often due to individuals being drawn toward water or high areas of traffic. Therefore, it's critical that individuals with intellectual disabilities be included in the emergency response systems. Our research shows that 30 states have already expanded their missing alert systems to include people with autism or intellectual disabilities. States that have done so in the Midwest or Western region include Iowa, Texas, Colorado, and New Mexico. Last session, Ohio and South Carolina also expanded their alerts. We're glad to see how strong Kansas's current protocol and enforcement for the Silver Alert system currently is, which I've hyperlinked in my testimony for you to see. The alert prioritizes self-determination and ensures that police ask the individual if they want to be reunited with the person submitting the alert, which really limits the risk of any abuse. Thank you so much for allowing me to testify. We look forward to working with Kansas to make this necessary change.
Thank you, committee. We have one other proponent testimony that's written only that I would draw your attention to. This is the parent of an adult daughter with a disability, Marvin J. Miller. So that concludes our proponent verbal testimony. Do we have any questions for any of the proponents? Senator Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just looking ahead to some of the neutral and opponent testimony, mostly from the law enforcement officials, and their concern is that the definition is too broad. And I could see that, and maybe we should consider refining the definition a little bit more so that they're not swamped with a bunch of these, because I know there's a broad spectrum of autism and disabilities. And so I don't know if any of the verbal proponents in the room would like to comment on that. But I'm just looking ahead to specifically Ed Klump's testimony and also Bob Stewart from the KBI.
Nick, you've come to the podium. Would you address that, please, and introduce yourself?
Certainly. Nick Wood, Associate Director at Interhab. In Interhab, for those who may not know, we're a trade association for 48 organizations across the state who provide services and supports to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So I'm not familiar with what their concerns are exactly. This bill actually is tighter in who it would apply to than previous versions or what's been talked about, and certainly in other states or here. At this point, it's limited to people who are 18 and above with just an intellectual disability. So we serve people, and you probably know the intellectual and developmental disability waiver serves people with both intellectual and developmental. The difference is intellectual disability is for people with an IQ of less than 70. So if you have a developmental disability like autism or cerebral palsy, for example, you might not be a person with an intellectual disability, if that makes sense. So we actually limited it to people with intellectual disability for that reason. We heard from self-advocates who said, well, if I can make decisions for myself, I don't wander, I don't have those kinds of issues, I don't want to be necessarily included in the alert. And they wouldn't be unless they have dementia or are over the age of 65 then.
Another question?
Yeah, well, I would think, I do share the concern because it does seem like a very broad, I mean, would you be opposed to us more tightly defining that for the bill's purposes? Because I think that was really their only concern. I don't think they're averse to issuing the alerts. I think their concern is it's so broad that it may create issues for them. And I think there's some other statutes where I know in the KBI with regard to KSA 21-6622, which regarding determining intellectual disability in capital murder cases. So we might want to look at that, and
We would definitely offer to meet with them to discuss their concerns. Maybe there's something we can work out or explain.
okay.
Yep.
All righty. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Erickson. Nick, would you mind staying up there for us?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you so much. And following up on Senator Thompson's question, in looking at the testimony, I think everyone agrees with the intent. When someone needs assistance, we need to get that as quickly and efficiently as possible. But I understand there's an endangered persons advisory that KBI and law enforcement enact just for the situations you're describing. Is that not working? Or can you help explain that a little bit?
Actually, maybe someone from the Attorney General's office could speak to that, but this silver alert, when it was passed for seniors, was specific to that population. So, I believe that it differs. There is an entire protocol through the Attorney General's office that departments across the state train to specifically understand how silver alert or an alert would apply to that population. And so now we're trying to include this population. I think probably the main difference is in the type of media outreach that they perform. If any other conferees want to speak to the question, I'd let them.
Are there any
Hi, yes.
conferees?
Oh,
Yes.
Yes, I can add a little bit. Delancey here from the Autism Society. The Silver Alert system allows for
Delancey?
statewide coordination. Yep.
Delancey, I'm sorry. For WebEx, would you please identify yourself again?
Oh, hi. Nancy Allred from the Autism Society. So to respond to your question, Nick was right that the Silver Alert ads allows for more statewide coordination with the media, local law enforcement, and the public. And it does have that way stronger protocol that I mentioned that's developed by the Attorney General, which allows for more self-determination for the individual and really it reduces that risk of abuse if someone is trying to submit the alert to do any ill will towards someone, while the emergency missing persons does not have a strong protocol. Thank you.
Senator Holscher.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and my apologies for being late. There was a massive accident this morning. I think my question is probably for Delancey. And here's what I'm wondering, in light of some of the concerns that have been brought up, can you tell me what has been your experience with similar legislation when it's been implemented in other states?
Yes, thanks for the question. Delancey Allred from the Autism Society. As I said, 30 states have already expanded their alert. And Nick mentioned that a lot of the other states are way more broad, which is true. That's a strength of the Kansas bill. It's pretty narrow with intellectual disability. Only 1 in 3 with autism have intellectual disability, so it's a smaller number. We haven't heard any issues with the states implementing this alert. A lot of parents really appreciate it because their individuals often wander off. Not due to any ill will or any. They're just wandering because it's in their nature to wander, and maybe they're drawn towards something. And so it's great to have these type of alerts to allow for the coordination among the whole state. Thank you.
Thank you, committee. Do we have other questions? Seeing none, I too, as chair, have some concerns about when we have law enforcement that is, either neutral but saying, could you please define this? And then also the concerns about when I hear silver alert or it comes up on my phone, I immediately think a senior, right? We have an elderly person. Maybe they have dementia, they've wandered away, we don't know where they are. What I would like to see is, I would like to see some coordination, Nick, that you had mentioned before, maybe working with them, talking about how we can come together on this with something that might work when they feel like they already have something like that, that's somebody in a crisis, and that they do reach out to media and they do the things that they do. I think I agree with Senator Erickson, everyone is in full agreement, this is important. But I also understand that they have difficulty if somebody calls in and has a missing person, they have to ask a lot of questions. And as you said, autism is not an immediate factor. It would be intellectually they have the intellectual disability along with the autism. So all of those things would be difficult, I would think, for law enforcement to say, how do I add them? Do I not add them? I'm not exactly sure what this means. And so I can understand, their confusion and their needing clarification. Committee, without any other questions, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 371. And yes. That's okay.
I wasn't on the list, but I can't answer your question.
Okay. Would you like to? Maybe you should bring some clarity. So I'm glad she caught me before I finished the words, closing the hearing.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Bob Stewart. I'm the executive officer for the KBI. I think that the committee's got the general intent of what my testimony was written. We certainly think that this is an appropriate move forward. We just are worried about the definitional aspect of it. And when we took a look at what was currently in Kansas statute, it's still very vague. And in fact, in the statute Senator Thompson cited to, it requires a review by two medical doctors or two psychologists. Our concern is on those day-to-day calls when the Peabody, Kansas Police Department or the KBI gets a request, what level of definition do we use in that hurried up situation? We need to help find somebody. Does this meet the standard? Does it not? And we're also worried that too broad of a standard might very well turn into too many alerts, which we know will cause the public probably to start ignoring them, which is something we really don't want to do. So that was our concern, and I'll certainly, KBI and I know the Attorney General will work to help figure out what the definition is. We're just not comfortable with that simple definition. The professionals in the field obviously get it far better than we do. So that's our concern, is from a law enforcement perspective, we really don't.
Thank you, and I'm pleased to hear that you are willing to work together with the proponents of this and committee. Thank you so much for being here. Committee, we are closing the hearing on SB 371, and we are adjourned.